Scary stories from Reddit. Story number 1. Titled Call Me. Submitted by Dr. Bepper. I was going along today, making an EVP recording for my Snapchat, and I decided to go behind a stage that my manager had said was way older than the current building and that he'd seen some weird things happen behind that stage. Just to refresh your memory, I told a previous story about a haunting in an elementary school. Well, a lot more creepy stuff has happened here, and that's what brings me to this story. I'm honestly not the smartest person, so I went back there looking for creepy shit. Well, I found what I was looking for. Under the old stage, I found a huge pile of dead flies, and what I think to be a dead rat. I was horrified, and I told my manager right away. We started getting the heavy-duty cleaning materials to clean up the hazard. After we got all the supplies, we removed the dead vermin and found a scrap of old notebook paper with a number written on it. It said, "Call me." I won't disclose the number, as not to spread what's been going on. Yeah, I was really disgusted and probably sick from all the decaying vermin, and I wanted to take my mind off of it and try to call this number to see if the person remembered leaving it behind the stage. That was a big mistake. When I got back to my house, made some coffee, and called the number, at first, nobody picked up. So I just assumed the number was no longer in use. I decided not to think too much about it and watched YouTube for a good hour until I got a call from the number. Lit, I thought. This might be fun, but the answer was just silent. I got 2 more calls after the first. Each answer was just silent, until about 2 hours ago when I got a text. At first I just thought it was some troll trying to scare the shit out of me, so I played along, seeing if I could crack the troll. But whatever it was cracked me. It started listing personal information, things I'd never just put on the internet. It told me where I was sitting and what my expression looked like. I tried blocking the number, but my phone wouldn't do it. I'm scared to go back to the school. Watch your back, that's what it said. Please help me. It's here. Fucking Christ, it has no face. Fuck, please help. It won't leave. The police won't answer. Please help. Call, and then this mysterious number. Number 2, The Milkman's House, submitted by the Big Red Weeb. I moved to V-Town around the time I turned 13. My father was in the military, and we quickly outgrew base housing, which led he and my mother to buy a duplex in V-Town. It was a small town, dusty and run down, but with some charms still left over. Our house was on Main Street, and behind it sat a creek that ran under a bridge and into a dam. After a month or so of living in V-Town, I realized that while this town functioned normally on the surface, underneath it was buzzing with heavy and dark air, too thick for me to breathe. We lived in V-Town for 4 years, and while I did have some good times, I can only recall being miserable and scared most of the time. I still have nightmares of being locked in my old room, not being able to breathe or speak, trying desperately to hide from the invisible. My family and I refer to the years we spent in the house as the forgotten years. We all have had trouble remembering our time as a whole, but we can remember some bits and pieces. Sometimes we'll sit and compare stories, remembering but still trying to forget. I wish I could put my experiences into chronological order, but living in that house seemed like a timeless loop. These are some events that I can vividly recall. My father and siblings had gone to visit a family member, so Mom and I were vegging out late one night watching some TV. After giving the house a deep cleaning, we both heard a loud crash from upstairs and immediately grabbed a plastic lightsaber and pre-dialed 911. We went to investigate my brother's room and found a large toy across the room, clearly no longer in the toy chest where we had placed it earlier in that evening. That was one of many loud crashes and instances of things being thrown. My little brother, Danny, hated his room. It was located in the attic, across the landing from my bedroom. My brother spent most nights at the house sleeping in my bed. My other two siblings spent several nights a week curled up in my bed with Danny. This went for most of the time we lived in V-Town. Danny would complain that something was scratching under his bed and at the wall space above his head. One night, he came into my room, tears streaming down his face and bloody scratches swelling on his upper back. He regularly chewed his nails down. There was no explanation. There was never an explanation. I also experienced the scratching under my bed on the rare nights that I slept in my room alone. I would hear voices, see wretched faces drifting around my head, and my bed would shake. Those nights were the worst. I would have concluded that I was losing my mind if I was the only one seeing and feeling these things. I often had a little boy visit me outside the door of my room. He would sit outside the cracked door and watch my siblings and I sleep. My sister and I saw him once when both our little brothers were sleeping soundly on the floor next to my bed. I remember crying because I felt like I needed to protect that little boy from the evil in our house. My whole family refused to enter the unfinished basement due to the growling noise that floated around your head and followed you back up the stairs. My youngest brother, Elliot, would see men in top hats standing outside our shed in the backyard. We later found out that in the past it had been utilized as an ice house. It was built by the town milkman, who had also built our home. The milkman would cut giant cubes of ice from the creek behind our house and pack the small building with ice, sawdust, and hay. It was the town's source of ice for the warmer months. It was revealed to us by a local history buff that the small crawl space we played in underneath the ice house was where the town people had stored their deceased in winter, until the ground was soft enough to dig a grave in. We had several neighbors commit suicide in the years we spent in V-Town. The whole town felt like it had a heavy cloud of negative energy, and to me it felt like it all stemmed from the dam, 300 feet from our house. I remember sitting on the edge of the dam and staring at the vicious, black, frothy water, trying to decide if it was worth slipping over the edge into, like several residents of V-Town had done before me. My father retired from the military when I was 17. We quickly relocated to upstate New York, and the V-Town house was on the market for 6 months. It ended up getting foreclosed on, like many of the historical but rundown houses that filled our town. A month after the house had foreclosed, I drove back to V-Town to visit a few friends. We came up with the terrible idea of spending the night in that house to try and capture something. One of the glass panels on the front door had been replaced with plastic, and I easily popped the panel out to unlock the front door and break in. Including myself, there were 4 of us. We camped out in my old bedroom and set up a simple voice recorder. It was as if the house was rebelling against our presence. We heard dishes breaking, stomping up and down the multiple staircases, and growling in the abandoned house. I felt like I had held my breath the entire time we were there. When we heard laughing and knocking, we decided we had enough, and it was time to get the hell out. We packed our sleeping bags up and fled the house. We were there for a total of 5 hours. I'm not sure what happened to the voice recorder after that night. Sometimes I wish I could remember every creepy thing that occurred in that house, because it's odd to have chunks missing from my life like that. But honestly, I'm glad I don't. Dealing with the trauma that I incurred helped me discover that I am an empath who is very sensitive to the paranormal, more specifically, the energy imprints. I do still have experiences anywhere I live, as does my family, but nothing will ever compare to the constant feelings of horror and dread we had in the V-Town house. I hope this came out less garbled than it felt as I was typing. Thank you for reading, and remember, beware of the house in V-Town. Number 3, Henry, submitted by Kif KG. It was sometime in June of 2003. I was 15. It was one of those hot, muggy kind of nights, and a group of my friends and I decided to go out and find something to do. We start walking towards downtown of Brunswick, where all the shops and stuff are, and we see this dark dirt road. The guys want to go explore this road, and us girls are like really hesitant about it. I don't know why, we just got a really bad feeling, but they convinced us to go. So we start walking down this road, and about 10 minutes in, we see a clearing with a bunch of rocks. We got closer and noticed the rocks were headstones. The guys are all intrigued, and I just had the worst feeling in the pit of my stomach. To this day, I've never been able to explain the feeling I had that night. Us girls go in, following the guys. I'm reading the headstones as we walk by, and we come by this huge headstone at the very back, and all it said was, Henry. No date, no nothing, just that name. And there was a single red rose on the ground in front of the stone. And what struck my attention was that it was a fresh flower in a cemetery that looked abandoned and forgotten. Then out of the corner of my eye, I see a bright flash of light, like I thought this was someone's flashlight. But none of us brought flashlights, and that feeling in my stomach just seemed to get worse the more we were there. So one of my friends offered to walk back to my place with me. I got home and said goodbye to my friend, then got ready for bed. That night, I had a dream, and it was very realistic. But I was back in the graveyard, in front of the headstone that said Henry, and an older man walks out from behind it. He's got gray, balding hair, and his skin was pale and looked almost like paper. He has a simple black suit and a bow tie, and green eyes that almost seemed to glow. He smiled, and the only thing he said was, "You can't get rid of me now." Then I woke up. The first time I saw him while I was awake was when I was at school for cheer practice. We were in the field doing laps and I saw him. He was just standing there staring at me from a distance. I thought I was crazy, so I asked my teammate if she saw him, and I'm pretty sure she thought I lost my mind because she saw nothing. Since that day, I see him everywhere. He's always there, even in pictures. There will always be a foggy white mass behind me or covering me, mostly in group photos though. The only times he says anything is when something bad is about to happen. I've learned to live with Henry in the shadows, always there, always watching. Ever since he came to me, my health has declined drastically, and I believe it's because of Henry. Number 4. First Encounter, submitted by Simon Says 758. I used to work at this hippie store when I was in college. It was in a historical downtown building. My coworker had told me that the original owner had lived in the basement of the store until he died in a kayaking accident. She always told me about how the new owner was convinced his spirit was still there. A couple months into the job, this coworker and I were just talking when this loud bang came from the employee entrance. We thought a car ran into the building because it was so loud. Then we heard footsteps. When we went to check it out, the steel door was swinging open, but no one was around. The door automatically locks when you shut it, and I'm still 100% certain I shut it all the way when I came in that day. This store's basement is super creepy. Dirt floor, old owner's stuff still strewn about, various tribal masks, and everything else that you could think of that make you shiver down here. We had a friend come and clear the place. No one was around. That night I had him help me close because I was terrified of turning the lights off using the breaker panel, with my back to this scary basement. He's snapping pictures while I'm finishing up various tasks. I heard him run up the basement steps yelling, "Holy shit, something's moving." He had got a picture of a blue figure at the bottom of the basement steps. Until that day, I never believed in anything paranormal. I'll try to find the picture and send it to you. Number 5. My Paranormal Experience, submitted by Tyler Marmalade. Hi all, I've been lurking on this sub for some time, and I've had a lot of fun reading everyone's experiences, especially late at night. Like everyone else, I'm going to give my own paranormal experience, although it's just a small thing and not too major. To start with, I was around 8 years old at the time, and it was New Year's, so everyone was up until midnight. My extended family had all gone home, and my parents and sisters were all in bed. I was asleep for maybe 2 to 3 hours, so it was about 3 or so in the morning, which makes this all a bit spookier. When I woke up, I had my first and only experience of sleep paralysis. I didn't see anything, but I was freaking out a fair bit. When I was finally able to move, I got up and ran to the bathroom, as I was winded and couldn't really breathe, and was worried I was really sick or something. I didn't end up throwing up or anything, so eventually left the bathroom to go back to my room. On my way back, I heard cups downstairs moving around, sounding like ceramic on a countertop, and this freaked me out even more. I checked in my parents' room and my sister's room, and they were all asleep, and all my family members were from earlier had left. Needless to say, I booked it to my bed and fell asleep. Since then, I've never had another experience like that, and I even moved houses some years ago. Although it's nothing glamorous, it still stays with me, and I don't think I'll ever forget it. If you read it this far, thank you. And number 6, Haunted Dorm, submitted by Mexican of America. I am now a sophomore in college, but this happened my freshman year. My roommate and I lived in a pretty small dorm, so if one person was doing something, the other knew about it. He had a class before me in the mornings, so whenever he would get up and get ready, I would also partially wake up. After his shower one morning, he comes back into the room and starts brushing his hair and looking in the mirror on his side of the room. I had a couple of packages of silverware sitting in a big cup in the top of my closet that had been sitting there since the start of the year and never moved. But this morning, when he was brushing his hair and I was slightly awake, a package of spoons came out of this cup and fell to this floor. Since he was looking the other way and I was laying down with my eyes closed, we didn't see them come out of the cup, but we both were startled when they hit the floor. This is the most prominent thing that happened to me while I was on campus, other than just generally hearing things moving and thinking my roommate was there when he wasn't. Hopefully, my dorm next semester has more paranormal events. Bonus story number 7, Something with White Eyes, submitted by Ajna96. So about 2.5 years ago, my husband and I were living with a friend and his wife and their 3 kids. The 3 kids shared a room and were 5, 6, and 7 years old. Now, the way the house is set up, you walk in and go straight past the kitchen and into the living room. Then if you turn left from the living room, you hit the hallway and immediately have the kids' room on the left and the bathroom right across from their room. Then you have our room right by their room. Well, one night I was walking out of our room to go to the bathroom and the kids slept with the door open. So while walking to the bathroom, I would check on them and make sure they were asleep and okay. Well, 2 of them have a bunk bed, and when I looked into the room, I saw a shadowy figure crouched over the kid on the top bunk, and the thing I saw was looking right at me with white eyes, and it freaked me out because I had never seen anything like it in reality, and I panicked and told their parents. I didn't really get any answers from their parents. It was as if they had no clue. And when I spoke to the kids, they never really mentioned remembering anything about something with white eyes. I have no idea what it was, but I do know that from now on, I will be taking something with me when I use the bathroom and check on the kids in the middle of the night. Thank you for listening to another episode of Night Terrors. That is going to bring this video to an end. Remember to subscribe and tap the bell so you're notified every time I upload a video. And as always, folks, fare thee well.